Well, welcome into another podcast, the podcast where I will once again try to speak in even, reserved tones rather than screaming and yelling to the top of my lungs. I'm going to try to be calm because I'm told that calm people are better able to reach other people. So allow me to give a very brief explanation of why, of all people in the entire world, Christians should not want a government entity endorsing, espousing, or showing off a preference to a religion. I've gone from being frustrated that people don't understand this to, after talking to several people, realizing that most people don't even know anything about the Constitution, which is odd because all I've ever seen for the past, especially since Obama was elected, is all these people touting off about the Constitution. I assumed most people, since they do that, must know what's in the Constitution, but it's become blatantly apparent that nobody does, other than the First and Second Amendment, primarily the Second Amendment. People around here know that one, because you can carry your shotgun. So I'm going to try to keep this podcast short. I could go on and on forever, but nobody would listen. I mean, I could go into quotes from the founders. I could go into all the many things that our founders wrote and said about the role that religion played or should not play in government, why it should not be in government. I could go into the many, many quotes where many of our founders, most of our founders actually, who everybody says are Christians and founded our nation on the Christian religions, they actually didn't. As a matter of fact, most of the founders were deist. In other words, they believed in a creator. They did not subscribe to any particular religion in general. And some of them subscribed to religions that, quite frankly, you just wouldn't agree with, and it'd bug you if we talked about it. So we're not going to talk about it. They understood that the government's role was to divorce itself from anything religious. In England, the Church of England was forced down your throat. You had to subscribe to that religion or else. And so they came from that. And they wanted to not only make sure we didn't have a state religion here, they wanted to make sure that we went so far as to guarantee that no aspect of government would even slightly go overboard and suggest that there be a religion. Now just stick with me. I know you're like, well, I'm a Christian and religion is good. Well, if you're a Christian, that is good. Good for you. That's great, man. That's awesome. But you're a person. You're not a government. A sheriff's department is an arm of the government. It's paid for and funded by taxpayer dollars of citizens. What citizens? Citizens who may be Christians, they may not be Christians, they may be atheists, they may be Hindu, they may be Muslim, they may be agnostic, they may be any number of things. And a government entity cannot appear to endorse, even come close to appearing to endorse a religion. So I still haven't gotten to the reason yet, so don't bail out on the podcast yet, because I haven't gotten to the reason. Because the reason is for you. If you're a Christian, then just listen and follow me. Now let me bring up, if you will, take you back in time to a law that Christians do not like and are firmly against. That law would be the law that made it legal to have abortion. And the Supreme Court upheld this. It's now constitutional. And a precedent has been set. But once a precedent is set, and it's made to the Supreme Court of the United States of America, decisions made, precedent is set, that is forever law from now forward to the end of time. You will never undo Roe versus Wade. You just won't ever undo it. It's precedent, it's law, it's set in stone. So let's go back to the Jesus stickers on law enforcement. Those are government agents. Law enforcement officers, while they may be your brother, your cousin, your friend, your co-worker, your neighbor, they're people. They're also agents of the government. They're paid by taxpayer money of the citizens, and they work at the arm of the government. They are an extended arm of the government. Just like the courts are, just like your local courthouse is, just like your local city hall is, Congress, Senate, all the way up to the top. And under the umbrella of the Constitution, separation of church and state, words that were actually spoken by one of our founders, I saw where somebody says, that separation of church and state is something you dang hippies made up. No, one of our founding fathers came up with that phrase. So you get the stickers on there. And it doesn't sit well with somebody, and it doesn't have to be here, because you can go, well, we're in South Alabama. And ain't nobody around here that cares about the Jesus sticker. We all want them on there. That may or may not be true. Forgive my bad impersonation, because I'm actually impersonating a guy I saw on a video day before yesterday. That's bad. I understand that's bad. But let's say it happens in New Mexico. Let's say it happens in Arizona. Let's say it happens in it happens in New York City. It happens in a progressive state. An atheist organization, the ACLU, the FFRF, one of these organizations takes a local police department, sheriff department to task. It winds up in a trial. It gets ruled on one way or the other, and over the course of several years, see, it won't affect you, and this is why most people don't care, because it won't affect you. You'll be dead and gone. All of us will be dead and gone before this happens. But do you care about the future? Is the question you should be asking yourself. So make no mistake about it, it's unconstitutional. Now, there's no point in debating that. It is just unconstitutional. It just is. If you'd like it to be constitutional, I'm sorry, that's not the way our government was founded. What will happen is one or two things are going to happen. It's either going to lose, or what could happen, which would be even worse for people who support this, is for it to win. Therein lies the greatest threat to you, as if you're listening, you're a Christian, if you're listening and you're a Buddhist, or you're a Muslim, or you're whatever religion that you are, Jewish. The greatest threat to you is that this wins in Supreme Court. And a precedent is set that a law enforcement agency or any arm of the government, I don't care who it is, a courthouse, the senators, whatever, any arm of the government can display religious passages, religious scriptures, religious thoughts, religious concepts, or anything religious on their vehicles, on their buildings, on their uniforms, or any of that. The worst thing that could happen for you is that the precedent be set with the Supreme Court that that's actually legal, when it's not, but it could happen. Once that is written in stone, you then have no control over what any sheriff, any police chief, any FBI agent, any CIA agent, any FDLE officer, any Alabama crime lab officer puts on their vehicle, puts on their uniform. You have no say-so in that. So it don't happen today because you're still here, but you're dead and gone 20, 30, 40 years from now, okay? And your grandkids and their grandkids are here. The climate of the United States of America is constantly changing. It's constantly changing. 50 years ago, over 90% of people in this country said they were Christian. Today, that number is somewhere in the 60 to 70% range, and of those, the people that say that they are practicing Christian is much lower. It's actually lower than the majority. It's actually lower than 50%. There's a huge number of atheists, especially anybody that's under 30. If you look at the numbers under 30, people who are 30 and lower, the agnostics and atheists is pretty huge. And so this is where the country's headed. The country is headed into a non-religious or at the very least, a non-Christian majority. And I don't know if that'll be 50 years from now. I don't know if it'll be 100 years from now, but that's where it's headed. And so once that happens, you will continue to see more and more police departments and sheriff's departments run by Jews, Muslims, atheists, agnostics, Hindus, people who worship Zeus, people who worship the almighty spaghetti monster, people who worship any number of things. And so now by setting this precedent today, Poland's going to go all the way to the Supreme Court, and you would be sitting here cheering for it to win. By golly, we have the right to put that on our car, when in fact the worst thing that could happen to you is for it to win, because it will set a precedent that says any sheriff or any police chief can put any religious, non-religious, any emblem or sticker or anything that they want on their car. And once they do that, you'll have people controlling your grandkids' neighborhoods with, there's only one God and there is no God but Allah. My point is, by supporting this, you're opening up the door to go in the completely wrong, opposite direction. Not only opening the door, but once it makes it to the Supreme Court and a precedent is set, it will never be undone. Just like Roe versus Wade will never be undone, that precedent will never be undone. And so you picture a time 100 years from now when you're dead and gone, and you got great-grandkids, and their kids, and their kids, and their kids. And they're in the minority. They're in the religious minority, and the majority of the people in America are either They're either one other religion or the majority of people in America are made up of a hodgepodge of other religions. Much like the white race is now the minority when you figure in all the other races. Of any one single race, the white is still the majority. But all the other races combined outnumber the white race. The same thing would happen with religion. And this is not a racist thing, I'm just using that as an example. So once you're in the minority, then you are opening up to people in power, people in local government, being able to push their religious beliefs to the forefront to where they espouse it, they promote it, they glorify it, and God forbid they start enforcing it. Now this is where it gets really interesting, because I see people posting all the time on Facebook about how scared they are about a Sharia law. Oh God, Sharia law is coming to the country. Well, I hate to tell you that by supporting and not understanding the ramifications of local sheriffs and local police departments putting in God we trust and this verse from Matthew and these other things on their police cars, what you don't understand is you are actually opening up the door to Sharia law to being allowed in the courtrooms. That is step one. It's a slippery slope. Once it's allowed on a sheriff's department car, police department car, once the Supreme Court sets its seal of approval on it, and the precedent is set, you can enforce your religious beliefs, you can espouse your religious beliefs, you can have religion be a part of your governmental job. Your part is an arm of the government. And by the way, police and sheriffs are an armed component of the government, not like some bookkeeper in the courthouse. These people are actually armed. They can go out and then even begin to enforce and impose their version of the law. So now you have an area of the country where the president has been set where we can display these things in our vehicle, display it on a uniform, you can display your beliefs, they can be on display as a part of you as a government agent, not you as a person. And this is where people are getting wrong. Any person should be able to do anything they want. That's why we have freedom of religion in this country. Where you draw the line is when it is government agents, people who are on the government dime, people who are driving government-owned vehicles, people who are enforcing government laws at the end of a point of a gun or a baton or a nightstick or a flashlight. That's when you start having problems. So we're down the road and the precedent has been set, and then suddenly in some pocket or some neighborhood of the United States of America, possibly some pockets that your great-great-grandchild has moved to be a computer programmer. Maybe it's some area of the country that your great-great-grandchild has moved to work at some six-figure, seven-figure job that's great, and it's in a neighborhood that is now in a completely different religious area. And so now your local departments are, let's just, since everybody's so scared of Sharia law, let's say that department is run by a Muslim sheriff, has several Muslim, and I hate doing this because it makes it sound like I'm continuing to use this prejudice against Muslims, and I don't do that. You judge everybody on their own character. There's fantastic Muslims just like there's fantastic Christians, and the vice versa is true for both religions. So please let me get that in there. But so you have a Muslim who believes Sharia's law is best, and now he's running a sheriff's department. The Supreme Court has set the precedent that it's okay to inflict your religious beliefs into your job as a police officer. Just like the police officers today are talking about how they have the protection of God and the protection of Jesus, and they're the peacekeepers, and we think it's time to stand up for God, and we're not ashamed of it. Once the precedent has been set, you got the Muslim police officer saying that, and he's got that sticker on all his sheriff's department's cars. In his county, he has Muslim patrol officers riding in his cars, and now they have on their car, there is no God but Allah. And Sharia law is the way to go. And they start enforcing local laws based on Sharia law. And then the next thing you know, people start getting arrested. And then it makes its way into the courthouse. Now the precedent has been set for agencies, buildings, government officers, government agents, law enforcement officers, law enforcement agencies to bring the religious aspect into that job. Then it's brought into the courthouse. And then once it's brought into the courthouse, based, mind you, on this precedent that was set based on a sticker on a car 125 years ago, which is where we're living now it makes its way into the courthouse. Now suddenly your kid that got arrested on the street because they'd moved to this area and they're Christians, they're now find themselves in this area that is has enough Muslims in it where they have Muslim sheriff. They now find themselves in a courthouse where there's also somebody in this courthouse that thinks Sharia law is just fantastic. Well, there's nothing you can do about it. The precedent was set 125 years ago when officers started slapping "In God We Trust" on their cars. Now Sharia laws made it into the courthouse. Now your great-great-grandkids grandkid, you're dead and gone, your great-great-grandkid, who's a Christian, following on in your footsteps, which you would be if you were here, you'd be proud of, is sitting in a courthouse where he was arrested by somebody who believes in Sharia law, thinks that his violation is serious enough that it probably should be handled by some extreme version of Sharia law, and he's now sitting before a judge who also coincidentally has that same point of view. And if you look back behind the judge's head, where we used to have the Ten Commandments, because everybody thought it was great that we should have the Ten Commandments in the courthouse behind the judge's head, suddenly in this particular courthouse, because a precedent has been set that you can bring your religion into your work as a government agent and a government entity, now has behind his head, there is no God but Allah. And underneath that, maybe there's something about how Sharia law is fantastic. And this guy is now about to pronounce judgment on your great-great-great-grandchild. And you know why all this happened? All this happened because in 2015, people thought it would be fantastic to violate the Constitution of the United States of America and allow religion to make itself into the government arena on police cars, sheriff's departments' cars. And so when people tell me that I'm some kind of ignorant, godless heathen for making comments about stickers being on a police car, the exact opposite is true. The very exact opposite is true. I'm one of the few people trying to stand up to protect your grandkids, your great-grandkids, and your great-great-grandkids from having to be sit under some rule of law that goes completely contrary to everything that we believe and hold dear today. And instead of people standing with me, instead of people understanding how the Constitution works, understanding how the law works, understanding what the Constitution is, understanding how the legal system works, understanding how precedents are set at the Supreme Court level, and envisioning a future that not only could happen, but I promise you will happen once this continues on, I would be the one lone guy in South Alabama standing up against everybody calling me ignorant, calling me a hater, and everything else they're calling me, when I'm the one guy here trying to stand up for the future of your kids and your grandkids to not fall under some religious doctrine that you don't believe in and you don't agree with. And it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating when you're the only one that's on the side of the people and the people think that you're some kind of heathen. And then when you point out that these sheriffs and these police chiefs are not only violating the Constitution, they're violating one of the very core principles of this country. It was a principle that our founding fathers thought was more important than any other principle. They went out of their way to build a wall to say this will not happen in this country. We will not start a country. We will not live in a country. We will not be a part of a country where religion can come into play on a governmental level, where those who have power over the people can infuse and enforce their religion into the public square. The old saying, be careful what you ask for. If that ever applied, it applies to this situation that's happening right now. And it takes enough time that no, you won't ever live to see it. You will die thinking that you were doing the best thing ever. When you leave this earth and you leave your kids, grandkids, and great-grandkids, and great-great-grandkids, you will leave here thinking that you really stood up for what was right. I'm going to tell you what, I stood up for what was right. And 50 or 75 years later, your great-grandkids are living under the oppressive thumb of somebody who has enacted Sharia law in the area that they live in. And you're like, oh, that's extreme. God, that's so extreme, man. I could never have. Yeah, it happens. It happens all the time. Roe versus Wade, if you ever needed any more proof of that, you don't need any more proof of it than Roe versus Wade. It is the supreme law of this land that you can legally murder babies. In this country, you now have a precedent set, and it is the supreme law of the land that it's okay to murder babies. And you want to tell me that this isn't going to set a precedent, that this isn't the starting path down the road of precedent set where at one day in some town, the local sheriff's department is implementing Sharia law into the way they do things. And then later on it's implemented to where Sharia law has worked its way into the court system. You want to tell me that's not, well, that's crazy. That can never happen. That's impossible. The supreme law of the land right now is that you can murder babies. As Forrest Gump would say, that's all I got to say about that.